The restaurant shimmered with soft golden light, the kind meant to flatter everything it touched. A violinist played in the corner, the melody weaving through the quiet hum of clinking glasses and murmured conversations. Emily sat across from Daniel, her hands resting neatly on the white linen tablecloth, the diamond on her finger catching the light like it was performing for the room. 10 years, Daniel said, lifting his glass of wine. His smile was charming, the same one that had once made her feel chosen, protected. To us, Emily returned the gesture, her lips curving into what the world would call a smile. To us, she echoed. The wine burned slightly as it went down, or maybe that was the silence between them, heavy and unspoken. To the other couples around them, they looked flawless, his tailored suit, her navy silk dress, their synchronized laughter at the right moments. But beneath the performance, Emily felt a hollow rhythm pulsing under her ribs. Every time Daniel's hand brushed hers, she flinched just slightly, praying he wouldn't notice. "You've been quiet tonight," he said, setting his glass down. His voice was smooth, the kind that could charm or command with equal ease. "Just tired," she replied. "Tired." He tilted his head. "You've been saying that a lot lately." Her fork paused over her plate. "Long week, that's all." He leaned back, eyes studying her, not lovingly but like a man searching for evidence. For a second, she wondered if he already knew about the late-night crying, the pills hidden in her vanity drawer, the way she sometimes sat in the car after work just to breathe before going inside. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. "Emily, I'm not the enemy," he said softly. The words were kind, but they felt rehearsed. She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Then why does it feel like I'm always defending myself?" A flicker crossed his face, surprise, maybe irritation. Then, like a practiced actor, he smiled again. "We've both changed," he said. "But that's marriage, isn't it?" The waiter appeared, breaking the tension, presenting a small chocolate cake with a candle glowing at its center. "Happy anniversary," he said cheerfully. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. "Make a wish." Emily stared at the flame. 10 years of love, loyalty, and fear flickered inside that tiny light. Her wish wasn't for forever. It was for truth. As the candle died, her eyes caught the reflection of Daniel's watch. Expensive, new, one she hadn't seen before. She wondered faintly who had given it to him. Outside, thunder rolled across the night sky. Inside, Daniel smiled as if nothing had changed, but Emily knew something had. And by the time dessert plates were cleared, she also knew she'd start looking for answers. The next morning, the house felt colder than usual. Rain tapped softly against the windows as Emily buttoned her blouse, her mind replaying fragments of last night. Daniel's watch, his steady smile, that careful tone he used when he said we've both changed. By afternoon, she decided to leave work early. Daniel had mentioned a late meeting, and she told herself she just wanted a quiet evening, maybe a bath, a movie, a little peace. But when she stepped into the house, a strange restlessness followed her through every room. Daniel's office door stood half open. He rarely used it anymore, not since they'd converted the space into a guest study. Still, the faint smell of his cologne lingered in the air, sandalwood and something sharper, metallic. She hesitated before stepping inside. His desk was perfectly organized, papers stacked, pens aligned, the lamp tilted just the way he liked it. Yet one thing stood out. The top right drawer. Locked. Emily frowned. Daniel never locked anything. She tugged the handle once. Then again. Solid. The drawer didn't budge. For a moment she told herself it was nothing, maybe business files, maybe documents he didn't want misplaced. But a quiet voice inside her whispered, "Then why now?" Her pulse quickened. She checked the bookshelf, the paper tray, even under the keyboard, looking for a key. Nothing. She laughed softly, nervously at herself. "You're being ridiculous," she muttered. Still, she couldn't leave the room. The drawer felt like a living thing, small, silent, holding something it shouldn't. That night, as Daniel came home, she watched him carefully. His steps were calm, confident. He kissed her cheek, opened a bottle of wine, and talked about his day as if everything was ordinary. But when he passed the hallway near his office, she noticed the faintest pause in his stride. 1 second too long. Later, after he fell asleep, She crept downstairs barefoot. The office door creaked slightly as she opened it. Moonlight spilled across the desk. Her fingers brushed against the drawer's edge again. Locked. Still locked. She crouched, peering underneath the desk. A small brass keyhole gleamed back at her. Her heart raced. She could almost hear the whisper of the secret behind it. By the time she returned to bed, her thoughts had twisted into quiet obsession. What was Daniel hiding? As dawn broke, she made a silent promise. She would find that key, because perfect husbands don't keep secrets. And deep down, she already knew. Once that drawer opened, their marriage never would be the same again. For the next few days, Emily's life revolved around that locked drawer. Each morning she lingered near Daniel's office, pretending to dust, waiting for him to slip, to forget, to leave the key behind. But he never did. His precision was maddening. Every gesture, every smile felt rehearsed. Friday night arrived with the heavy quiet of routine. Daniel cooked dinner, pasta her favorite, humming softly as if nothing had changed between them. They ate in near silence, the clinking of forks echoing like whispers of tension. Afterward, they watched a movie neither of them followed. It was past midnight when Daniel's phone lit up on the coffee table. A private number. The vibration cut through the silence like a scream. Emily's eyes flicked to the screen just as Daniel reached for it, fast. Too fast. He turned it face down and pressed the side button, silencing the ring. Spam, he said. A smile too quick, too smooth. But she saw it. That flicker in his eyes. Guilt, panic, or both. Her throat tightened. At midnight? She asked softly. Daniel chuckled, forcing nonchalance. People sell anything these days. Maybe it's a telemarketer in another time zone. She didn't answer. He got up, phone still in hand, muttering something about checking the doors before bed. Emily sat frozen, staring at the dark screen, her heart pounding. When he finally returned upstairs, she waited. 10 minutes. Then 20. His breathing deepened beside her, steady and rhythmic. Asleep. Carefully, she slid out of bed, padded downstairs, and found his phone charging in the kitchen. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked it with his code. The same 4 digits she'd known for years. But the call log was empty. Deleted. She dialed the unknown number from memory, pulse thudding in her ears. 1 ring. 2. A click. Then, silence. She almost hung up, but a faint breath answered. And then a voice. Female, quiet, intimate. Daniel? Emily's breath caught. Before she could speak, the line went dead. Her reflection in the kitchen window stared back at her, pale and wide-eyed. The house seemed to hold its breath with her. She stood there for a long time, the phone still in her hand, the word echoing inside her head. Daniel. The next morning, Daniel acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed her cheek, poured her coffee, and left for work early. But Emily's mind was no longer calm. She knew one thing now. Whoever that woman was, she knew Daniel well enough to whisper his name in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, that locked drawer held her answer. The morning after the mysterious phone call, Emily woke to an empty bed and the faint smell of Daniel's cologne fading from the room. He had left early again. She stared at his pillow, untouched, cold. Something inside her shifted. Not anger. Yet, but the quiet certainty that something was terribly wrong. All day her mind returned to the voice on the phone. Soft, familiar with his name, full of a kind of intimacy that only years could build. Who was she? A client? A friend? Or someone who once stood where Emily now stood? Beside him, believing in his love. That evening, the house was silent when Emily came home. Daniel had texted that he'd be working late. The words looked harmless on the screen, but she didn't believe them anymore. For hours, she sat on the couch, her eyes flicking toward the hallway, toward his office. By midnight, her decision was made. She found the tiny brass key tucked inside the lining of Daniel's old briefcase, a forgotten corner she'd checked a dozen times before. It slid into the drawer's lock with a click so soft it felt like the room exhaled. Inside lay ordinary things, receipts, insurance papers, old pens. Nothing strange. Then her fingers brushed against something smooth and faded. A photograph. She pulled it out. Daniel, younger, sunburned, laughing, stood on a beach, his arm wrapped tightly around a woman Emily didn't recognize. The woman's hair was windswept, her smile wide, her eyes fixed on him like he was the only man in the world. Emily flipped it over. On the back, in neat handwriting, Cape May, June 2008, 2 months before their wedding. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. When Daniel returned home, she was waiting in the living room, the photo on the table between them. He froze, just for a heartbeat. Then, like a mask sliding into place, he smiled. "Where did you find that?" "In your locked drawer," she said evenly. He shrugged. "It's old. Nothing important." "Who is she?" "A friend," he said. "From before us. I forgot I even had that picture." But Emily saw it, the flicker of something behind his calm. A memory he couldn't bury. She didn't push further. Not yet. She simply nodded, picked up the photo and slipped it into her pocket. Later that night, lying beside him in the dark, she stared at the ceiling, her hand brushing the edge of the photograph beneath her pillow. She didn't know the woman's name, but she knew one thing. Daniel had loved her once, and tomorrow, Emily would find out who she was. For the next week, Emily couldn't escape the image of that photograph. The woman's smile haunted her every thought, radiant, familiar in a way that made her skin crawl. She searched through Daniel's old drawers, his emails, his photo archives. Nothing. It was as though the woman had been erased. Daniel, however, seemed strangely calm. His temper softened. He brought her flowers, cooked her favorite meals, even suggested they start fresh. One morning over breakfast, he mentioned something new. "I booked us a marriage counselor," he said casually, spooning sugar into his coffee. "Dr. Reeves, she's supposed to be very good." Emily blinked. "You think we need therapy?" He smiled faintly. "I think you need to talk to someone." "We both do," the way he said you lodged in her chest. Still, she agreed. Maybe pretending to cooperate would reveal what he was hiding. Their sessions began the following week. Dr. Reeves was calm, kind-eyed, and unnervingly observant. She asked questions about their marriage, how they met, how they argued, how they forgave. Daniel spoke smoothly, charmingly, like a man reciting a script. He painted himself as the patient husband, the caretaker of a fragile wife. Emily barely recognized the story he told. By the third session, she stopped talking altogether. She just watched him. The subtle tightening of his jaw whenever Dr. Reeves asked, "How do you make her feel safe?" The way he deflected blame with quiet sophistication. That night, after their appointment, Daniel came home with an armful of groceries and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "See?" he said cheerfully. "Progress." She nodded, but her stomach turned. The next morning, while tidying the kitchen, Emily noticed a leather-bound notebook sitting beside the fruit bowl, Dr. Reeves's handwriting on the cover. "Session notes. R. Danielson." Her hands trembled as she opened it. At first, the words seemed ordinary. Observations about communication, emotional barriers. But then her eyes caught on a line that made her freeze. Daniel exhibits patterns of control masked as concern. Repeated deflection. Possible gaslighting behavior. Mentions wife's instability repeatedly. Possible projection. She turned the page, heart hammering. When asked about previous relationship, Claire became agitated. Unresolved guilt tied to disappearance event. Emily's breath hitched. Claire. A name. A woman. The woman. She read on. Daniel fears losing control more than losing love. He believes manipulation is care. The notebook slipped from her fingers and landed open on the counter. For a long time, she just stared at the pages, the words blurring through her tears. Behind her, the sound of the front door opening made her spine stiffen. Daniel's voice floated in from the hall. "Em, you're home early again." She snapped the notebook shut, shoving it under a stack of mail just as he walked in. He smiled, setting his keys down. "You look pale. Everything okay?" "Just tired," she said softly. He kissed her forehead, his lips warm, his voice gentle. "That's what I love about you. You always overthink things." Emily managed a smile, but inside something broke. That night she lay awake beside him, her eyes open in the dark, whispering the name she'd found like a prayer. Claire. And she knew. Tomorrow, she'd learn who Claire really was. The name echoed in Emily's mind for days. Claire. It wasn't just a name anymore. It was a presence, a shadow sitting at the edge of every room. When Daniel spoke, Emily heard it beneath his words. When he touched her, she felt that other woman between them. She waited until Daniel left for work before opening her laptop. Her hands shook as she typed Claire disappearance Cape May 2008 into the search bar. The screen filled with old headlines. Local woman missing before beach wedding. No suspects in Claire Hawthorne case. Fiancé cooperates fully with investigation. Her stomach dropped. The attached photo showed the same smiling woman from Daniel's drawer. Same hair, same eyes, the same effortless joy that haunted Emily's sleep. She scrolled down, scanning lines that blurred together. Witnesses last saw Claire leaving her fiancé's beach house late one night after an argument. She never returned. Emily leaned back, her hand covering her mouth. Daniel had been the fiancé. She opened more articles, desperate for contradiction. There was none. The police had questioned him but found nothing. Claire's body was never discovered. After 6 months, the case went cold. Daniel had simply moved on, married Emily 2 months later. When he came home that evening, she studied him differently. The way his smile appeared before his eyes caught up, the measured calm in every movement. "You're quiet again," he said. She forced a smile. "Just tired." Later that night, while he showered, she slipped into his office. The locked drawer was empty now, the photo gone. Her pulse pounded. He knew she'd seen it. On the desk sat a single sheet of paper, folded once, her name written neatly on the front. She hesitated before opening it. "Emily," it read. "I hope you're starting to understand why some things are better left in the past. I love you. Don't dig for ghosts. They never rest." Her breath caught. He had known she'd look, he wanted her to. That night, as he lay beside her, his arm draped casually over her waist, she stared into the darkness. Every inhale from him felt like a warning. Steady, practiced, dangerous. The next day, she went to the library and requested the full case file. The clerk, an older man with kind eyes, frowned when she gave the name. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "that case still keeps the locals talking. Poor girl vanished right before the ceremony. Some folks say the fiancé was charming, too charming." Emily managed a thank you and took the file home. In the folder was a list of items recovered from Claire's belongings. A phone, a purse, a necklace with a sapphire pendant. No blood, no body. Just absence. But what chilled Emily most wasn't the evidence. It was a note at the bottom of the report. Fiancé provided full cooperation. Case closed for lack of evidence. Emily closed the file, her pulse shaking through her fingers. She looked toward the hallway, toward the man she'd married, the man who slept peacefully beside her every night. And for the first time, she was certain of it. Claire hadn't left him. Daniel had made sure she couldn't. Rain hammered against the windows, the kind of relentless storm that blurred the world into a sheet of gray. Emily stood at the kitchen sink, watching Daniel through the reflection on the glass. He moved across the living room, collected his tools, and headed toward the basement door, the one he always kept locked. "You never let me go down there," she said softly, almost to herself. He glanced back, smiling. "Flood check. Pipes are rattling again. Stay upstairs, okay? It's damp and dirty." The door shut behind him with a click. Emily's pulse raced. For 10 years, she'd respected that boundary. But now every no from Daniel felt like a warning. She waited until his footsteps faded, until the creaking floorboards below settled into silence. Then she followed. The basement key hung from a hook above the pantry. She'd noticed it weeks ago, never daring to use it. Her hand trembled as the key slid into the lock. The door creaked open, exhaling the smell of earth and metal. She descended slowly. The air grew colder, heavier. A single bulb swayed from the ceiling. casting ghostly shadows across shelves lined with paint cans, boxes, and neatly labeled jars. Nothing seemed unusual, except the far corner, where the concrete wall looked newer, patched, and painted unevenly. She stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the edge of the wall and found a slight gap, a wooden panel disguised as part of the structure. Heart pounding, she wedged it open. Behind it sat a small metal box. Dust clung to its edges, but something about it felt deliberately placed, preserved. She pulled it out, set it on the workbench, and flipped the latch. Inside lay a necklace, a sapphire pendant, delicate, unmistakably feminine. Its silver chain was streaked with something dark, something dried long ago. Her knees weakened. She'd seen the same necklace in the police report. Claire's necklace. A low hum filled her ears, not from the basement, but from inside her, panic rising like static. She reached for her phone, hands shaking, wanting to take a picture to prove what she'd found. Then, a voice. Looking for something? The words froze her. She turned. Daniel stood at the foot of the stairs, drenched from the rain, a wrench in one hand. His eyes were calm, too calm, Emily, he said softly, stepping forward. I told you not to come down here. Her breath came shallow. What is this, Daniel? He looked past her at the open box. His lips curved into a faint smile. You shouldn't go through things you don't understand. Whose necklace is that? Silence, then. You already know. A crack of thunder shook the house. For a moment the light flickered, plunging them into darkness before snapping back on. Daniel's expression didn't change. He set the wrench down, slow, deliberate. Let's go upstairs, he said. We can talk, but Emily didn't move. She clutched the necklace tighter, feeling the cold metal bite her skin. Somewhere above them, the storm raged on, but the real thunder was between them. Quiet, waiting to strike, they came up from the basement in silence. The storm outside had softened into a cold drizzle, the kind that whispered against the windows instead of pounding them. Daniel walked ahead, every movement deliberate, while Emily followed, the necklace still hidden in her fist, her heartbeat loud in her ears. He stopped in the kitchen, opened a bottle of red wine, and poured 2 glasses. The casualness of the act terrified her more than if he'd shouted. Sit, he said softly. Emily hesitated, then obeyed. The chair beneath her felt like ice. Daniel handed her a glass and took the seat across from her. His eyes were steady, unblinking. You found the box, he said finally. I wondered how long it would take. Whose necklace is it? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Claire's. The word fell heavy between them. He took a slow sip of wine, his tone disturbingly calm. She wasn't who she pretended to be. None of them were. But you... He smiled faintly, tilting his glass toward her. You were different. Emily gripped the stem of her glass, trying to keep her voice steady. You said she disappeared. She did. He leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. She lied. About everything, and her family, her past, even her name. I found out days before the wedding. She said she loved me, but she was planning to leave. To humiliate me. You know what that does to a man? Emily's stomach turned. So you heard her? His eyes darkened. I ended the lie. For a moment, the rain's rhythm filled the silence between them. He swirled his wine, watching the liquid circle the glass like blood. Claire was chaos. You were order. That's why I knew I needed you. You were the version of her that could stay. Emily's hand trembled. You think I'm her replacement? Daniel smiled faintly. No, you're the correction. Something inside her snapped. You killed her, didn't you? He didn't answer, just set down his glass, leaned back, and said, Sometimes people disappear because they want to. Sometimes they disappear because they have to. Tears blurred her vision, rage and terror colliding inside her. You're insane. He tilted his head almost tenderly. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I simply learned. Emily rose from her chair, her legs shaking. I'm done listening. Daniel's voice followed her as she backed toward the stairs. You won't leave me, Emily. You're smarter than she was. She froze halfway up. Try me. He smiled, slow and certain. If you go digging again, you won't like what you find next. The storm outside began to rise once more, thunder rumbling across the dark sky. And as Emily stood trembling on the staircase, One thought burned through the fear. She would make him pay. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay awake beside Daniel, her eyes tracing the shadows on the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. The words he'd spoken over wine replayed again and again, not as fear now, but as fuel. By dawn, she had already decided she wouldn't run. She wouldn't cry. She would make him believe everything was fine. When Daniel stirred beside her, she turned toward him and smiled. "I overreacted," she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. He studied her face, searching for cracks. "You were scared," he said finally. "But now you understand." "I do," she lied, reaching for his hand. "We just need to move forward." Daniel's expression softened. "That's my girl." He kissed her forehead and left for work. The moment the front door closed, Emily sat up, exhaling shakily. Her hands still trembled, but her mind had never felt clearer. She had played the part for 10 years. The doting wife, the listener, the forgiver. She could do it a little longer. She showered, dressed neatly, and poured herself coffee like any other morning. But instead of heading to her office, she drove across town, to the precinct where the name Detective Harris was still burned into her memory, from the newspaper clippings she'd found in Daniel's drawer years ago. The detective was older now, gray at the temples but sharp-eyed. He looked up from his desk as she approached. "Mrs. Moore?" Her throat tightened at the sound of her married name. "Emily," she corrected quietly. "I need to talk to you about Claire Bennett." His expression shifted instantly. Recognition, caution, curiosity. "That case is closed." "I don't think it should be." She slid a small envelope across the desk. Inside, a photo of the necklace from the basement, taken that morning with her phone. "I found this in my husband's possession." Harris stared at it, silent for a long time. "You understand what you're implying?" Emily nodded. "I understand perfectly." He leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "You realize if we open this up again, it won't stay quiet. He'll know. That's why," she said steadily, "you'll have to move carefully." For the first time, Harris smiled, grimly. "So you've got a plan?" "I've been living with a liar for 10 years, Emily replied, her voice low but fierce. "I know how to pretend." Harris nodded slowly. "Then we'll start there." As Emily stepped back into the morning light, the air felt colder, sharper. Her pulse quickened. Fear and control tangled together. Daniel believed she had forgiven him. That was his first mistake. The storm came without warning. Thick rain pelting the windows, thunder rolling like a restless beast above their quiet house. Emily watched the lightning flare across Daniel's face as he sat across from her at the dinner table. Everything looked almost exactly like that night of their anniversary. The candles, the wine, the perfect couple act. Only this time, every detail was part of her design. "Feels like déjà vu, doesn't it?" she said softly, filling his glass. Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe it's a good sign." "A fresh start," she forced a laugh. "Maybe." Her hand brushed against the small microphone taped beneath the table, hidden by the tablecloth. The red light blinked faintly against the wood. For weeks she had practiced this, her tone, her timing, her patience. Detective Harris had given her the recorder that morning. "He trusts you," the detective had said. "Use that." So she did. "I've been thinking a lot," Daniel said, leaning forward. "About Claire. About how everything got twisted." Emily held her breath. "Tell me," she whispered, eyes steady. He sighed, swirling his wine. "I loved her, you know. But she wasn't like you. She pushed, she lied, she wanted to leave. I couldn't let her destroy what we had. I couldn't let her win." Emily's chest tightened. "So you stopped her." He looked at her, something dangerous flickering behind his calm. "I protected us. Same as I've always done." The words hung between them like smoke. Heavy, poisonous. Outside, thunder cracked again. Emily's pulse quickened. "You told me you buried that part of your life," she said. "That it was over." Daniel's smile faded. "You've been talking to someone." Her eyes widened, just a fraction too late. "What? No." He stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. His hand reached beneath the table and found the blinking light. Silence, then his voice, low and venomous. "You were recording me." Emily rose slowly, backing away. "Daniel, please, you think you can trap me? After everything I've done for you?" He lunged forward, the wine glass toppling. crimson spilling like blood across the table. Emily screamed, stumbling toward the drawer where she'd hidden the gun Harris had given her. Just in case. They struggled, his hands crushing her wrists, hers trembling but fierce. The room spun in chaos. A candle fell, glass shattered, lightning flashed. "Daniel, stop!" she cried. "Why couldn't you just love me?" He roared. Then, a deafening crack. The world went still. Smoke curled in the air, mingling with the scent of spilled wine. Emily stood shaking, the gun slipping from her hand, Daniel collapsing at her feet, eyes wide, mouth parted as if to speak one last word, but none came, only silence. The house was quiet when they found her. Morning sunlight spilled through shattered glass, cutting through the stale air that still smelled faintly of wine and gunpowder. Daniel lay motionless on the floor, blood dried like dark paint across the tiles. Emily sat beside him, her nightgown torn, her eyes blank, as if she had been staring at the same spot for hours. Detective Harris arrived before the coroner. One look at the scene and he knew what the reports would say. Domestic altercation. Husband dead. Wife traumatized. Case closed. But something in Emily's stillness unsettled him. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even trembling. She just kept whispering one thing over and over. It's finally over. Days blurred into weeks. The story spread like wildfire. Beloved businessman found dead in his home. Wife survived years of hidden abuse. The media devoured every photo of Emily. Fragile, beautiful, the perfect widow. They painted her as the victim, the survivor, the woman who outlasted her monster. But Harris knew better. He'd seen the cold clarity in her eyes when she gave her statement. She had played the part flawlessly. Grief where it mattered, silence where it didn't. At the inquest, she spoke softly. "He attacked me. Tried to stop him, it just happened." Her voice cracked at the perfect moment, a single tear sliding down her cheek. The jury didn't deliberate long. Justified self-defense. When it was over, Harris found her outside the courthouse. "You did what you had to," he said. Emily met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Did I?" He hesitated. "You got justice, Emily," she smiled faintly. "Justice," she echoed as if testing the word. Then she walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor like punctuation marks to a story no one would ever truly understand. A week later, she visited a small coastal cemetery. The sky hung gray, heavy with wind. She stopped at a weathered grave marked Claire Bennett, gone but not forgotten. For a long time, she said nothing. Then softly, "He didn't kill you quickly, did he?" Her voice trembled with something between sorrow and rage. "But he killed me too. Just slower." She laid a white rose beside the stone and closed her eyes. Behind her, waves crashed against the rocks. The same sound from that photo she'd once found in the drawer. When she finally turned to leave, a faint smile touched her lips. Not of peace, but of something colder. The world believed she was free. Only Emily knew the truth. There's no such thing as the perfect ending.